Hi guys, welcome to Informer. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe. I'm a 39-year-old man engaged to Shelley, who works at Mel too. She joined as a new recruiter on a different team, but we hit it off since we're on the same floor. After spending time together, I asked her out and we've been dating for 3 years. Now, we're getting ready for our wedding next year. Like most couples, we've had our good times and bad times, arguments, but also lots of love. Everything was great until I got promoted and had to work in a different place. My new job and longer commute keep me busy, so we don't see each other as much. We used to spend a lot of time together because we worked in the same office, but that's changed. But the biggest problem is Shelley's coworker, Smith. I've never liked him because of how close he is to Shelley and how he behaves around her. It causes a lot of arguments between us since I changed locations. It's not just jealousy. I've worked with Smith before, and he doesn't treat women well. He always flirted with the girls he worked with. I told Shelley to be careful around him and keep her distance, but she didn't listen. She thought he was just friendly and misunderstood. I wondered if she was too nice or too naive. After I moved, I noticed Shelley having lunch and coffee breaks with him, even though she could hang out with other people. It bothered me when she started packing lunch for him often. Shelley started getting too close to Smith, especially on social media where he left flirty comments on her photos and they tagged each other in memes a lot. Then, at the last office party, she chose to go with Smith instead of me, even though I offered to pick her up. She said I should go straight to the party from work. At the party, I wanted to hang out with my old colleagues, but I felt like people were hinting about something with Shelley and Smith. So I talked to Shelley about it, saying their behavior made others uncomfortable. She said Smith was just her best friend and promised she wouldn't betray our relationship. I was surprised because I didn't know when Smith became her best friend. Then I heard Shelley was doing things for Smith at the office, like getting him coffee and making him lunch. She said people were jealous because Smith might help her get promoted. I told her it's okay to get help from seniors, but she shouldn't become like his assistant. She got upset and accused me of insulting her and trying to control her. Most of our arguments were about Smith. It got worse when I saw them sitting too close and lying about it when I visited the office unexpectedly. I wanted to surprise Shelley after a meeting, but I found her sitting very close to Smith in the cafeteria. His hands were on her back and sometimes on her thighs, and she didn't ask him to stop. They seemed to be engaged in a rather amiable conversation, which appeared entirely unrelated to work. I stood by the elevator and observed them for some time. I then decided to call her. She looked at her phone screen, but subsequently placed it face down on the table. Seeing this made me furious. I texted her to inquire if she was occupied. She read the message and took a moment before responding that she was in a meeting. This falsehood made me realize the extent of other deceptions she had been telling me. I messaged her again to inform her that I was actually at the office. She showed my message to Smith and they both stood up, presumably to depart. I left before they could reach the elevator. I headed straight home even though there were still several hours left in my workday. I simply could not concentrate on work with the mental state I was in. It pained me deeply because I genuinely loved her and did not anticipate her lying to me. After a while, she texted me asking where I was and whether I had left the office. I chose to disregard her texts. When she arrived home, she questioned why I had left the office without informing her. I told her I had a severe headache, so I went back home. That week felt lengthy as we hardly spoke and I maintained my distance. Things changed when we got a notice about some teams going on a trip for a client meeting. I saw Shelley and Smith's names on the list, but my team wasn't included. Rumor was Smith picked Shelley to go with him. Shelley came home that day really happy. After dinner, she started getting ready for the trip, which was still a week away. I have to admit, her excitement annoyed me a bit. She tried on different work clothes before packing and asked me how she looked. I couldn't help but make a sarcastic comment about how good she looked and how Smith might like it too much. She sat on the couch, looking angry at me. After a tense silence, she started yelling. She said my insecurities were not her problem and I couldn't control her. She said I didn't trust her and accused me of trying to limit her freedom, saying I was acting like a bossy man. She said she wouldn't let me ruin her career. I stayed quiet for a moment, then asked about her meeting with Smith in the cafeteria. She got pale and said they had to meet there because all the meeting rooms were full, but I noticed how into their conversation they were, and how he touched her back while she ignored my calls and shared my texts with him. She admitted she was scared I'd get mad if she told me about the coffee break with Smith. She said it's hard to avoid him because he's a senior helping her with her job. She almost said she felt like she owed him for his help. I asked what kind of help he was giving that made her feel so obligated, even if it hurt our relationship. She begged me to trust her and promised not to do anything to mess up our relationship. I wasn't accusing her of cheating, but their behavior crossed lines that could be seen as cheating and could get worse if we didn't fix it. We argued for hours, crying and upset. It got so intense that I decided to talk about it calmly another time. The business trip was important, and I didn't want to ruin her chances by causing a scene. I told her I trusted her and she needed to keep that trust by avoiding anything that could ruin it. After our argument, we worked things out. She was happy about the trip and her presentations, but I still felt uneasy as she left, even though I dropped her off at the airport with a smile and wished her luck. She called me earlier to say she got there safely and was getting ready for her big day tomorrow. I trusted her, but I couldn't shake the feeling of worry about her being close to Smith. If I were to discuss this with anyone, I would probably be seen as an insecure man. I value this forum where I can freely share my thoughts without fear of judgment. Of course, she thought he was a cheerful and kind person because he was adept at flattering her. Moreover, it's normal for changes to occur when you don't see your partner regularly. However, this man definitely had hidden intentions, no question about it. Calling him her best friend seems more akin to friends with benefits. What she's engaging in appears more like emotional betrayal than physical infidelity. If you have a negative feeling about this man, especially given his reputation, chances are your gut feeling is accurate. It has been some time since my last update. I was concerned that I might be criticized for being overly controlling with my fiancé, but I am thankful that you have confirmed that I was merely being prudent and did not ignore any potential dangers. I'm relieved that I did not overlook those caution signs after my last post. I read many accounts in this community of spouses cheating during business trips, which made me anxious. I endeavored to be sympathetic, but I couldn't stop imagining various scenarios in my head of Shelley cheating on me with Smith. I had a strong impulse to call and check on her frequently, but I managed to restrain my thoughts and give her some space. Her behavior during and after the 3-day trip was odd. She was unusually reserved and behaved differently when I inquired if everything was all right. She said her presentation had not gone as expected, which she claimed was the cause of her mood. Yet it seemed there was more to it, and her actions sparked suspicions for me. She was never so attached before, but suddenly she was texting me all the time and wanted to be with me all the time. It's not that I didn't like being close, but it happened so suddenly that I didn't understand what she really wanted. I couldn't figure out what was going on between her and Smith. She never talked about him, and I never saw her texting him. I wasn't sure if she felt guilty or if she genuinely wanted to be close to me. At first, I thought she was avoiding him because she knew it bothered me, but it was more complicated than that. A few weeks later, I was back at my old office for a meeting. When the meeting ended, I went to find Shelley and my old colleagues. Surprisingly, Shelley's desk was empty, so I asked where she was. I learned that she had called in sick that day, which was news to me. I thought maybe she had become ill after I had departed from her office. I tried calling her to check on her well-being, but she did not answer. Eventually, she returned my call claiming she was occupied in a work meeting. Curious, I inquired about the nature of the meeting, and she responded rather irritably, "It's a work meeting." I then asked if she was still at the office, and she abruptly replied yes. Where else would I be on a Wednesday afternoon before hanging up? This left me with a storm of thoughts about her deceitfulness. I also noticed that we hadn't been intimate since her return from the business trip. Whenever I initiated, she either claimed to be too exhausted or not in the mood. When I arrived home, I planned to have a serious talk with her, but I found her asleep, looking quite pale. I decided to delay our discussion until dinner. Later, when she awoke, I attempted to ask about her day, hoping she would be open. However, she merely responded that it had been fine, just as I was about to question her. She suddenly brought up the idea of transferring to my office location. I questioned her about her reasons for wanting to move and if something was troubling her. She maintained that everything was all right, offering no additional explanation. I noted that her demeanor had shifted since her return from the business trip, and she attributed this to her dissatisfaction with her performance in front of a client, worrying it might impact her prospects for a promotion. I assured her that it was okay and sometimes things don't proceed as expected, so she shouldn't worry too much about it. But she still didn't say why she called in sick to work that day. Since she seemed stressed, I decided to wait and talk about it later. Eventually, she fell asleep, but I couldn't stop worrying about how she'd been acting lately. Feeling suspicious, I couldn't help but look at her phone. I went straight to her WhatsApp messages, even though she didn't seem very interested in Smith. He seemed to like her. Their last messages were before her business trip, and they hadn't talked since. I also checked her social media messages, but there was nothing strange there. As I kept looking through her messages, I found one that got my attention. It was from an app where she had booked an appointment with a gynecologist soon after returning from the trip. The text showed that the doctor had sent her a report through the app. Intrigued, I opened the app and found an in-app chat conversation between Shelley and her doctor about a consultation. In their discussion, Shelley disclosed that she had experienced postcoital bleeding. I was clueless about what that meant. The doctor recommended she undergo an STI test. These texts raised red flags in my mind, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was amiss. I went to the reports section of the app and accessed her test results. To my, however, I still wondered why she had felt the need to take such a test when we had not been intimate for almost a month. I became more anxious and concerned. A quick Google search explained postcoital bleeding as bleeding that occurs after rough or forceful intercourse. My heart sank because I knew I had never been rough or forceful with her. This left me with a terrible predicament. Either she had been unfaithful or someone had forced themselves on her. Both possibilities were devastating, and I found no comfort that night. Instead, I spent the night pacing in the backyard, desperately trying to calm my racing thoughts. When she woke the next morning, I was in the living room, displaying signs of sleep deprivation. She asked about my actions during the night, and I replied that I had been reviewing her STI reports. Her reaction was instant. She froze and sat down on the sofa, struggling to find the words. I explained that I had gone to the office the previous day and discovered she had been on leave, which contradicted her earlier explanation. She confessed she had lied impulsively, claiming she was at an adoption clinic when I had called. She tried to explain why she lied, saying she was anxious. But I didn't believe her and thought she had cheated. She tried to convince me more, saying an STI could cause bleeding after sex, and her clean test results proved she was innocent. I asked who she got the STI from, and she started crying. She kept saying she didn't do anything wrong and only took the test to check her health because she was stressed. She said she stayed away until she got the results. I said STIs don't just appear without contact, and we hadn't been close for months. Before I could say I didn't believe her, she said she wanted to confirm her health. I lost trust in her completely and told her I needed a break from our relationship. The subsequent dispute escalated in intensity, with her firmly denying any fault. She presented one weak excuse after another, and I sensed my patience diminishing. In an attempt to avoid regrettable actions given my state of mind, I chose to depart. She collapsed, begging me not. I was forced to leave, but I abandoned the situation. I am now at my parents' house attempting to comprehend this inconceivable situation. It's a difficult period, and her tears appear to be merely a pretense. It's like discovering a young child with their hand in the cookie jar. You already suspect she's been unfaithful. She takes a trip, and upon returning, she needs to take all these tests. It's quite obvious she has been unfaithful. This woman is too much to handle. Turns out, she's not only cheating but also lying. I left my house and stayed with my parents. She kept trying to contact me, but I didn't respond. Then, after a week, I got a call from the company's boss. He said there was a big problem and I needed to come to his office right away. When I got there, I found out that someone had given our project's design to another company. This was bad because the project was important for our construction company. There was a lot of pressure to fix it fast. While I was dealing with this, Smith's wife came to see me. I knew something was up. She told me that during the business trip, Smith accidentally sent her a picture of him drunk and with Shelley. She knew Shelley and I were engaged and thought I needed to know the truth. Even though I had a strong feeling about it, getting confirmation that my worst fears were true was heartbreaking. I sat there, feeling numb, trying to understand what just happened. She showed me the picture, and it was hard to look at. They were both undressed, and Shelley looked drunk. I was so angry that I wanted to get rid of Shelley right away. The other woman, Smith's wife, was crying a lot and looked really upset and tired, like she hadn't slept for days. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was fine, but had something important to tell me. She seemed unsure whether to say it, but I told her she wouldn't get in trouble from me. Then she said Smith sold our project design to another company for a lot of money. I asked how she found out, and she said she looked through Smith's emails when he got back from the trip. She gave me all the proof and told me to do something about Smith. What shocked me even more was that Shelley was involved in it too. Both of them had schemed against the company, and this had been their secret agenda during all those seemingly crucial meetings. It was infuriating to realize that we had put so much effort into this project while they had been deceiving us for their own selfish interests, and presented him with all the evidence. The investigation was still ongoing, and the team had uncovered some clues pointing towards Smith, but they hadn't found concrete proof yet. However, the details provided by the affair partner's wife left no doubt about the perpetrators. When I returned home that day, Shelley looked utterly miserable, like a shadow of her former self. To be honest, I no longer cared about her at all. I had given her as many opportunities as she required. She had shown total disregard for our relationship and had ruined everything. She looked at me with a sense of indifference, and I told her to stay away from me. She tried to minimize the situation, but I revealed the condemning photo that the lover's spouse had given me holding it up to Shell's face. She froze, possibly wanting to argue it was altered. But my stern look closed off any debate and she relented. I told her we had gathered all the proof against her and Smith for selling the project desk crafted to the rival. She pretended not to know, but I reminded her that the proof clearly implicated her role in the plot. She suggested that her lover might have used her laptop without permission. At that moment, I wasn't sure whether she was still deceiving, or if her lover had indeed exploited her. Honestly, I didn't care anymore after seeing her true nature. I realized I had never truly known her, and she had been leading a double life the whole time. I made it clear to her that this discovery didn't excuse her from being a despicable person. She started weeping and pleaded for another opportunity, but just looking at her filled me with revulsion. I terminated our engagement by throwing the ring at her and demanded she leave the home. Removing her from my life was tough as she overwhelmed me with countless texts and voice messages, despite being blocked. It's been a few days since she departed. I had been staying at my parents' house until she moved out. Her lover was terminated and blacklisted for his deceitful acts, and the management is planning to lodge an official complaint against him to prevent him from damaging another firm. Shelley also lost her position. She attempted to appear at my parents' home, begging me not to destroy her career. But I clarified that it wasn't my decision and I was powerless to change it. It's undeniably a tough period for me, but I can't help feeling relieved that I avoided a relationship with someone who turned out to be a fraud. It's baffling that she would request me not to ruin her career when she herself made all the decisions, including collaborating with that crook Smith. She wasn't just working together with others, she was controlling the whole situation. Let me tell you a story. About 25 years ago, I was 50 years old. I had an affair with my current husband, who was 55 at the time. Back then, he was married to Mary, who was only 28. Sadly, I got pregnant from that affair, and I had to tell my husband the truth. This led to their divorce, which was really hard for everyone. It was a tough situation. After the divorce, my husband and I got married when our daughter Anna was just 2 years old. We owned up to the trouble we caused and even went to couples therapy to work through our problems. We know what we did was wrong, and we've suffered a lot emotionally because of it. But we've worked hard to make our marriage work over the years. Fast forward to when Anna got married at 23. Just 10 months into her marriage, she found out her husband was cheating on her. It was a terrible shock for her, and she was devastated. She had a hard time eating or sleeping, and at one point, I found out she had thought about suicide. We supported her completely, offering therapy, a place to stay, and help finding a job. She's doing better now, but the pain from her husband's cheating still hangs around, especially since they've been together since she was 16. During this tough time for my daughter, I often thought about my own past. I realized I had once been involved in an affair that ended a marriage. I had an affair with a married man, and I couldn't stop thinking that perhaps Mary, my husband's first wife, had suffered the same agony that my daughter was experiencing now, if not worse, considering my husband had been married to her for a long time. This guilt began to resurface, and it was gnawing at me. I tried everything to deal with this guilt. I sought therapy for myself and attempted to persuade myself that it was all in the past, that it had occurred 25 years ago. However, my husband eventually realized that something was deeply troubling me, and he inquired what was wrong. I chose to confide in him, disclosing the truth about my past and how I had played a role in the breakdown of his first marriage. I stated that I couldn't hold on to this guilt forever. My husband and I engaged in a lengthy discussion about it. Unfortunately, Anna 2512 had been listening to our conversation, and a few days later, she confronted me with a devastating question. She wanted to know if she was the result of an affair, as she had overheard our discussion about her father's affair. and how she was the consequence of our past deeds. I had no choice but to be honest with her. Hannah reacted with anger and used harsh words. She called me a home destroyer, expressed her disdain for being the outcome of deceit and infidelity, and even confronted her dad, calling him a disgusting cheater. In the end, she left our home and ceased all contact, seeking shelter at her aunt's house, who happens to be my husband's sister. And that's why she never really liked me. She just endured my presence because of our daughter. We visited at Syl's house, but our daughter continued to give us the cold shoulder. Syl disclosed everything to my daughter about the situation. My husband got into a dispute with her. Syl clarified that she had vowed not to deliberately reveal the truth to Anna, but if she ever inquired, she wouldn't lie to her. So when my daughter asked for more details, she fulfilled her promise and revealed the truth. My daughter refuses to speak to us. It turns out that Anna managed to locate Mary, and she discovered that Mary lives in the same town as yours. Mary has since remarried and has her own children. Honestly, I can't comprehend why my daughter wants to meet that woman. I tried to dissuade her, telling her it's a dreadful idea, but all she said was a homewrecker, like you wouldn't understand what I'm going through. I'm still feeling distressed, and my husband is troubled too. I feel really guilty about what I've done in the past, but I wouldn't want anyone else to go through this. I really want to fix things between me and my daughter. As a mom, I need some advice. I know I'm getting a lot of criticism. I can't change what happened or fix everything I did wrong. I just don't want my daughter to think she's the result of a lie. She's the result of our love, even though things started out messy. I know I messed up, and I'm ready to face the consequences, but I don't want my daughter to suffer because of it. After the divorce, Mary cut off contact with everyone, including my husband. Honestly, back then, I was really focused on my pregnancy and didn't really think about my husband's past. I didn't try to get closure or anything like that. I briefly thought about writing Mary a letter, but I was worried it would make things worse. I never planned to tell my daughter about our past because, well, it's over and done with, and I didn't think it should affect her. The past happened late at night, and I thought Anna was already asleep. But she came to our room to ask for headache medicine and overheard our conversation. Yes, I'm going to therapy now. My husband divorced Mary right after I told him I was pregnant. He was a good husband and father to Anna when they were married. His past with Mary doesn't really matter to our daughter's life. He never taught our daughter to cheat, and he even talked to her about how important it is to be faithful in marriage before her wedding. I know he messed up in his first marriage, but he's changed a lot since then. Just to be clear, he and Mary didn't have any kids together, and I didn't know he was married when we started dating. When I found out, I wanted to end things, but he said he loved me and didn't want to be with Mary anymore. Then I got pregnant. I know I should have ended it then, but we were in love, and he kept promising he would get a divorce. I want to say thank you to those who gave helpful suggestions instead of just criticizing me. I'm coming back here because my life feels like it's falling apart, and I don't know what to do. Firstly, I heeded your suggestions. We opted to give Anna some breathing room and refrained from disturbing her until she felt prepared to speak to us again. We didn't contact her until yesterday when she initiated contact with us. She had ceased communicating with us about a week before I posted my initial message. During that period, she visited Mary. After a week, Anna messaged us yesterday and expressed her wish to speak. She proposed that we visit S's house. It was a touching moment because for the first time in a week, Anna embraced us. Tears welled up in my eyes as I expressed how regretful we were for everything we had done. She too apologized for her harsh words towards us, explaining that she was in a troubled and didn't know how to manage until she met Mary. My heart dropped at this disclosure. I had hoped Mary would speak poorly of us, but according to my daughter, Mary was extremely kind. Upon learning about the issues in Anna's marriage, Mary comforted her, reassuring her that it wasn't her fault. Mary viewed her as a remarkable woman who deserved better. She urged Anna not to squander her life on a man who had broken her heart and displayed character flaws. They also discussed Mary's experiences after her divorce, how she cut ties with everyone linked to my husband and returned to her hometown to live with her parents. She faced severe depression following her divorce. 2 years later, she met her present husband and they fell in love. They married and moved to our town. According to my daughter, Mary's husband treats her exceptionally well and they have 2 daughters and a son together. I was really happy to hear that Mary was doing well. She even gave my daughter some of her special homemade cookies. My daughter said we should thank Mary for staying in touch with us. Mary told us she didn't hold any hard feelings toward us and forgave us a long time ago. She told my daughter not to stop talking to us because, even though we made mistakes, we raised her well. After all, we're not perfect. Anna shouldn't blame us or feel bad about the affair. It actually made Mary's life better. Anna isn't the result of lies or betrayal. She's a wonderful gift, and she should be grateful to have supportive parents. I was really touched by what Mary said, and I can't deny it. I've always felt a bit of envy towards Mary because she seems truly kind. I could never match her because I've committed something terrible. The guilt lingers in my heart, knowing that I hurt such a compassionate person. Then, my daughter revealed a shocker. She explained that she still needs some time away from us. Even though Mary's perspective has eased her anger towards us when she looks at us, all she sees are people who have inflicted significant pain on others. She needs time to reconcile with this. We were devastated, to say the least, but we understood her need. She desires space to see if forgiveness is feasible. At the moment, she feels she can't forgive us yet. She needs time to process her emotions and wishes to keep speaking to Mary because she offered valuable guidance on handling unfaithfulness. I assured her that we'll provide her with what she needs and that we love her unconditionally. I'm confronted with a dilemma and am uncertain how to proceed. All I desire is to have my daughter back. These past days have been incredibly stressful. It's not that I'm upset she wants to speak to Mary. I'm simply heartbroken that she doesn't want to share anything with me. She used to confide in me, even about the smallest matters, and now I've become a stranger to her. I'm aware that someone claiming to be Mary made a similar post. I don't know if it's truly her or someone else with a different tale. If you are reading this, Mary, I am genuinely and deeply sorry. I realize I'm 25 years too late, but only now do I understand the pain my husband and I caused you. It wasn't until my own daughter faced a similar situation that I comprehended the anguish you must have gone through. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive. Thank you for taking care of my daughter. You are a kind individual with a gentle heart. Here is a story from Mary's perspective. It has been several years since I last had any communication with my husband or anyone connected to him. During our college years, my husband, 50 years old, and I, 53 years old, met, fell in love, and eventually married. We established our lives together, and the time came when we felt prepared to start a family. I was 26 and he was 28 at that time. We tried for about 5 years to have a baby with no luck, so we asked a doctor for help. It turned out my husband had problems with fertility, but I was able to have a baby. He really wanted a child, so not being able to have one made him very sad. I promised to support him no matter what and never pushed him. I told him I loved him a lot, no matter what happened. Then one day, he told me something shocking. He said he got another woman pregnant. He had been cheating on me while we were trying to have a baby. I actually knew this woman because she worked at a bakery my husband often went to. Now everything made sense. My heart broke into countless pieces. We argued, and he explained his reasoning to be with her since it seemed sensible to him to stay with the mother of his child. I was enraged with both of them. While I was desperately longing for a child, my husband had fathered another woman's child. It was heartbreaking to see them together. This woman, let's call her B, even attended our divorce proceedings and waited outside. Witnessing my husband shower her with affection and care, caressing her pregnant belly, was excruciating. After our divorce, I relocated and moved in with my parents. I was consumed by profound depression and struggled to concentrate on anything. My father owned a restaurant in my hometown, and it was there that I reconnected with my now husband, Bill, 53 years old. Bill and I had attended high school together. We began talking, went on dates, and eventually I became pregnant with our son. That's when we decided to get married. Along the way, we welcomed twin daughters, then to our family. Bill received an excellent job offer in the same town where I had lived with my ex-husband, and we chose to move there. Surprisingly, living in the same town did not disturb me as much as I had anticipated. About 15 years ago, I happened to run into my ex at a family picnic. He apologized and I managed to forgive him because holding on to bitterness serves no purpose. We went our separate ways and we haven't had any contact since. A few days ago, I got a surprise message from a young woman. She asked if I knew my ex-husband. I was shocked. She said she was the daughter of my ex-husband and B. Let's call her A. She knew about her dad's affair with her mom. She wanted to meet me and say sorry. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to meet her. But my husband thought it might help me feel better, so I said she could come over to my house. When they got here, I noticed how much she looked like her mom, except for her nose. She sat down and cried as she talked about how her husband cheated on her, too. She had even considered ending her life in the aftermath. Recently, she also found out that she was conceived as a result of my ex-husband's affair with her mother. She sincerely apologized to me and pleaded for my forgiveness. Initially, I had thoughts of mocking her before our meeting, but now I felt a profound sense of empathy. I recognized my younger self in her from 25 years ago. She explained that she didn't understand why she sought me out, but believed I was the only one who could truly grasp her situation. My heart reached out to her, and I couldn't stand to see her in such pain. So I hugged the poor girl who was weeping without control, and I shed tears alongside her. I reassured her that she was an extraordinary woman and that the actions of her husband were a reflection of his character, not hers. We sat and conversed for a time, during which she confided in me about her rage upon discovering how her parents had wronged me. Now she sees her mom as someone who broke up a family and her dad as someone who was unfaithful, which are the same problems that led to her own marriage falling apart. Honestly, some people might think I should feel happy that she's going through a tough time, but I don't. It's clear she's dealing with something really hard. It must be really painful for her to think about how she was born. I don't want her to blame her parents or herself. Even though they did some bad things, they really loved her and gave her a good life. I don't feel any anger toward her. I even invited her to have dinner with us, and my kids and husband welcomed her. I gave her some food and cookies to take home. She asked if we could stay in touch, and I said yes. My husband and I are moving soon because our son is going to college and our daughters will be going soon too. We're planning to sell our house and go back to our hometown. We can keep meeting until then, but I want to set some rules. It's surprising how 25 years ago I was angry at her family for causing trouble in my life, but now I only feel understanding. She's a nice young woman who wants to make up for her parents' mistakes, and not many people would choose to do that. I'm ready to help her, even though I'm not sure if it's the right choice or if she has secret reasons. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button below.